Episodes 3 and 4 are about our main heroes Simon, Cake, and Fionna crossing the threshold and plunging into a multiverse of adventure. In episode 3, Cake discovers the land of Oo and has a chaotic series of escapades. In episode 4, we find out that Prismo's been meddling with things that have been forbidden to him, and the menacing God Auditor is introduced. Breakdowns seem to be a theme in this show in general. Cake is the only cheerful character who's been at the center of an episode thus far. Once again, the second of these episodes was my favorite, but I thought they were both superbly executed. In episode 4, we see a darker side of Prismo that isn't entirely new, but I'll get to that later. What I'll do here is summarize the episodes, analyze the structure and characterization, and consider where the overall plot might be heading. The opening of episode 3 is honestly perfect. We open with Prismo lounging idly, watching Finn and Jake's shenanigans like it's a TV show, which, you know. Meanwhile, Fionna is trying to find Cake but can't. Simon is no less upset than Fionna. His attempt to summon Betty has failed, and instead he is faced with a cat. Cake, on the other hand, quickly becomes excited at having a whole new world to explore. So right from the beginning, we're given key information about what we can expect from the four characters who are key to this pair of episodes. Prismo's idle lounging is really idle in the worst sense of the word, from a certain point of view.
Did you all get out of the wrong side of the bed this morning?
From a mental health perspective, it doesn't look like he's doing great. From the point of view of the bureaucracy he belongs to, he's not doing his job. The guy can barely keep it together in his Wishmaster role right now. Fionna's desperation to find Cake shows us Fionna at her most sympathetic. Simon's frustration at not getting what he wants shows us he's not coping with the disconnect between his desires and what is possible, setting the stage for future conflict. Cake runs off because she's excited and overwhelmed. Of course, this episode is primarily about Cake. I loved the scene where she bumps into the squirrel from the crazy cult in the episode Up a Tree, the 4th episode of Adventure Time Season 5. She doesn't know whether he's friend or foe, but rather than overthinking the situation, she's able to just go with it, live in the moments, or act on instinct as she puts it. This is exactly what the other characters, Fionna and particularly Simon, cannot do, thus far at least. Their overthinking has them constantly questioning what purpose they have in seemingly meaningless lives. It's an interesting contrast. Again, Alice in Wonderland is drawn upon as an influence, with foods that can make you bigger or smaller. If Squirrel's smart enough to find people willing to pay for cursed apples, he can't be as dumb as he seems.
Innovation in market structure and recreation.
Unfortunately, he's being hounded by the cult he used to belong to. Despite being shrunk down, Cake stands up to the crazy cult. Squirrel dubs Cake a hero and helps her turn back to her ordinary size. Unfortunately, Cake's lack of forethought leads her to accidentally wreck a quiet forest enclave, setting the forest folk against her. Meanwhile, Fionna shows how much she cares about Cake by spending a sleepless night trying to find her. Simon tries to cast his spell again, this time summoning Fionna to Oo. I love the anime sound effect when Fionna first sees Simon and thinks he's Ice Prince from her dream. With the help of the Fionna and Cake fan, Astrid, Fionna tracks down Cake just in time to save her from a whole mob of forest roughs. What I found most interesting about this episode is the contrast Cake provides with our previous protagonists. Cake's lack of forethought allows her to enjoy the present without getting stuck in concerns about her purpose or whether her actions have meaning, the concerns that are still plaguing Simon in this episode. At the same time, that lack of forethought gets her on the wrong end of mob justice. Thinking too much is Simon's trap, and not thinking enough becomes Cake's. In episode 4, we have a reversal of Simon and Fionna's roles in the first two episodes. Fionna is taking action to seize what good she can from her chaotic life, while Simon has given in to despair to the extent he can barely function. Poor dude's having a breakdown. Episode 4 opens with Sammy's tea house, a tea shop in an exotic end of the cosmos run by a powerful cosmic entity who just wanted to retire to a life of making tea. But everything changes when a ruthless God Auditor attacks, defeating and imprisoning the entity for abandoning his post. The God Auditor, known as the Scarab, then decides to take a job involving Prismo. Prismo the Wishmaster, meanwhile, is a mess. He's got bags under his eyes, he hasn't shaved in days, there's empty cans and fast food floating all around his pool. Where's his friend Cosmic Owl? Did the Cosmic Owl get punished for his mistake in the Adventure Time episode Hoots or for some other mistake? Anyway, when Prismo realizes he's facing a crossover situation, he brings Fionna, Cake, and Simon into his place. Then we get the reveal that Prismo broke some cosmic rules and created the Fionna and Cake universe himself. To hide his rule breaking, he hid the new universe in Ice King's head. Prismo even put some of the worst moments of Simon's life on screen in order to explain the situation to Fionna and Cake. The Scarab arrives to audit Prismo, and Prismo tries to usher the trio to an exit, but Simon holds the group up, complaining Prismo dredged up the worst parts of his life like it was nothing, which just annoys Prismo. Prismo mentions that the creation of Fionna and Cake's universe could have unpredictable effects on the multiverse, and there is a crack on the head of one of the cosmic time entities, so perhaps more timeline mayhem is about to unfold. Prismo says, "That's the last time I make an unauthorized universe," out loud, while he's trying to fend off the Scarab. The Scarab always wanted to be the Wishmaster, and he leaps at his big chance to take down Prismo. When Prismo tries to shepherd Simon, Fionna, and Cake to an exit, Simon says, "What's the point?" But Fiona's slap across his face and a reminder that her world and everyone she cares about is at stake is exactly what Simon needs to propel him into action. The episode ends with the trio in a new world. Simon follows through on his decision to help Fionna and Cake by deciding the best thing he can do is become the Ice King again. It's a great cliffhanger ending, and it's left up in the air what happened to Prismo and the Scarab. Let's draw out some of the juicier elements of storytelling in these episodes. First, what the heck happened to Prismo? As Prismo puts it, "I used to really like my job, but after eons of making stuff for others, I wondered what it would be like to make something for myself." He says it so casually, but this statement raises so many questions. Why did Prismo stop liking his job? He says it as if he just got bored, but he looks a little worse than someone who's just bored. We know a mistake in the cosmic bureaucracy can attract a vicious response, as Sammy from the tea house found out firsthand. Was Prismo's social circle purged because of their mistakes, or did Prismo himself drive people away? Prismo can be ruthless and self-centered. Possibly the best example is the Adventure Time episode Is That You?, in which Prismo prevents his own death by splitting Finn off into two different timelines. In one timeline, Finn remains a hero. In the other, Finn is doomed, first trapped in a magic sword, then later turned into a new cursed character, Fern, who is unstable and dies after a miserable and very short life. As for Ice King, the wizard was hopelessly oblivious to the reality of what was going on around him. There is no way he could consent to having a universe stored inside his head, which is not a sentence I ever thought I'd say. Prismo tells Simon, "You are like a big nutty hard drive, and everything went great until you were cured." Simon, like Finn in the episode Is That You?, is used as a convenient tool for Prismo's ends. Which makes me wonder, has Prismo told Simon, Fionna, and Cake everything? We saw his heroic stand against the Scarab at the end of episode 4, but he's got skin in the game. If the Scarab can prove Prismo's created a new universe, Prismo's boss will bring the hammer down on him. I'm interested to see if I'm just overly suspicious, or if there's something darker lurking behind Prismo's actions. Now that we've discussed Prismo, we can look more broadly at where the series is heading. There's a clear underlying structure to the story thus far. The hero's journey, a famous narrative structure identified by Joseph Campbell, involves, put simply, various stages of a hero journeying from an ordinary world to a special world where extraordinary things occur. In Campbell's own words, a hero ventures forth from the world of common day into a region of supernatural wonder. Episodes 3 and 4 focus on the stage known as crossing the first threshold. In The Writer's Journey, Christopher Vogler describes this as an act of the will in which the hero commits wholeheartedly to the adventure. Think of Cake the moment she's transported into a new world and gets to explore. Think of Fionna when she finds Cake and decides to defeat the forest ruffians and save her cat. Think of Simon when he gets over his despair and transports himself, Fionna, and Cake to another world and safety. The plunge into another world is of course the most iconic version of crossing the first threshold. In this context, the Scarab fits the narrative archetype of the Threshold Guardian. If, in episode 4, he found and got rid of the universe that shouldn't even exist, that would prevent Simon's decision to embrace the adventure. Is the Scarab going to be a main antagonist? According to Christopher Vogler, Threshold Guardians are usually not the main villains or antagonists in stories. Often they will be lieutenants of the villain, lesser thugs or mercenaries. And the Scarab does seem very mercenary in his mindset out for himself. But let's take a step back and dive a bit deeper. If Simon has a heroic role in this series, and surely he's at least an anti-hero, then who is his main antagonist? Well, the hero's journey story structure contains an archetype known as the Shadow. This archetype represents a character's dark side. Dark side here is not necessarily about good and evil, it refers to a person's unexpressed, unrealized or rejected aspects, or more poetically, the shadow world of the unconscious in Vogler's words. As Vogler puts it, a shadow may be a character or force external to the hero, or it may be a deeply repressed part of the hero. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde vividly depicts the power of the dark side in a good man's personality. I think it's fair to say that Simon's primary antagonist will be the Ice King, the part of himself that he has locked away, and I think Simon's journey will not end in him becoming the Ice King or in him being cured of the Ice King's influence forever. Back in episode 2, he says to Finn that he almost misses being the Ice King. I think that Simon has to make peace with his past, the good and the bad. I think that he may benefit from accepting particularly the positive qualities of the Ice King, like his ability to find joy in small things. At least from a narrative point of view, clearly Simon is haunted by his past, and before the story's end, he has to confront that one way or another. One last point before we finish up. There's a nice use of symmetry in Fionna and Simon's stories thus far. While in episode 1, Fionna was mostly floundering around, episode 4 ends with her having a clear goal, saving her world, and taking clear action, demanding and getting Simon's help. This mirrors the end of episode 2, in which Simon has a clear goal, getting Betty back, and takes clear action, which causes the current mess. Meanwhile, in episode 4, Simon's the one floundering around until he comes to a decision at the end. It's interesting that all it took for Fionna to go from gloom to optimism was to be catapulted into the world of adventure similar to the one she dreams about. She said it feels like she's in a video game, so maybe the reality hasn't sunk in yet. Anyway, I really like the direction the writers are taking Fionna and Cake in these last 2 episodes. What I really want to know is whether Sammy or Cairo Siphon ever gets his tea shop back. Poor dude got robbed. That wraps up my thoughts and theories based on episodes 3 and 4. If you have your own theories about where the story is headed, feel free to share them in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, you can help the channel by liking and subscribing. Thank you for those of you who subscribed already. Have a great week and thank you for watching.